I went through every stupid financial decision, every stupid relationship decision, every massive fight we've had, anything that's gone wrong in the last 20 years of my life. Alcohol was the common denominator. And so I finally had to say, I'm going to take a season that has no finite end and just take this out, and we're going to see what life looks like without it. What is up, guys, and welcome back to Life by the Horns. Most people see the version of a man that exists today, the business success, the marriage that looks strong, the discipline, the faith. What they don't see is the road that led there. For both Nick and I, the road was not clean. We both grew up with distant fathers. We both battled addiction, alcohol, destructive habits, and the kind of internal struggles that quietly erode a man's life. We both came dangerously close to destroying our marriages. And if we're honest, there were seasons things looked successful on the outside while everything inside was collapsing. But somewhere along the way, something changed. For both of us, that change started with faith. Not the kind of faith that makes life easy, the kind that forces you to confront the truth. Truth about who you've been, truth about the damage that you've caused, and truth about the man you're capable of becoming. Today's conversation is a little bit different. Nick and I are going to ask each other questions, not as experts, but as two men who have lived through failure, addiction, broken identity, and the long road back. This episode is called From Failure to Freedom: How Faith Elevated Our Marriage, Business, and Life. Nick, let's start where your story begins. Nick, both of us grew up with fathers that were distant in different ways. How do you think that shaped the man you became early in life?
So let me start by defining distant, because I will give my father credit where it's due. He's a great man, and I have to start by saying that. He did a lot with very little. He raised 6 kids to the best of his ability with the skill set that was handed down to him, and I think that he broke. I don't want to call them generational curses, but I will say that I feel that he performed at a higher level than his father did.
Yeah.
And that's not a knock on his dad. It's just me leaning into who I know my dad is. But to carry that success and to get to the level of success that he wanted, he was distant. So my dad's distance was, he traveled a lot. He was never home. And I think that the absence of having him there, and then also when he had to come home to be the disciplinarian, led to a very strained relationship, and the feeling of, I guess, KPI driven success stemmed from it. It was my report card. If I did good, my dad would pay attention to me. If I was good at sports, my dad would pay attention to me. If I was really good at something, that's how the attention came in. And it's a great skill set to develop from a business standpoint, because it does lead to some success, but from a satisfaction, fulfillment in a regular life setting, it definitely tends to leave you empty. So it started that pressure to want to perform, and the I guess the not real conclusion that I'm only as good as my last performance. Yeah. It started at very young. So the perfectionism and the self-degradation kind of led there. And then obviously not having my dad in the home a lot, I made a lot of very questionable decisions. So yeah, that's kind of how it showed up early.
Yeah, I think and a lot of similarity there. My dad didn't travel as much, but there was a lot of distance in the home. And to your point, life was a scorecard.
Yeah.
Same thing. If I was on honor roll, great job, I got rewarded. If I was, hitting the ball on the ball field, great job, I got rewarded. If not, it was, very much the opposite. And to your point, I think it creates this byproduct of performance-driven mentality and perfectionism. The downside is it's not sustainable, and there's some coping mechanisms that probably showed up in both of our lives in those seasons of low.
I 100% agree with that. I think that if the only time you're shown love, and again, this is not a knock on my father, it's a conversation. And I'm sure it's not the only time that he showed me love. It's what I remember. Being shown love based on performance-driven attributes doesn't show you how to lose properly. It doesn't show you how to gain lessons from loss. And it doesn't show you how to heal from loss. Those things were absent. It was always just striving for the next win, no matter what I had to do, because I wanted to feel that joy. So yeah, it's, I know that you and I have had very, very similar things, and that's why we get along and we view things a lot the same way together. But with you, when you look back at your childhood, where do you think that like the absence of a strong father figure affected you the most? Like it's like identity, confidence, like your idea of what manhood or being a man is. Like what do you think it affected you the most?
Well, I mean, I think it affected everything. For sure, there was a lot of self confidence issues early on. I mean, I was a short, fat kid, and I just, desperately
Makes two
wanted,
of us.
and I desperately wanted, approval and attention from him and from everybody. So there was definitely some identity things. The most interesting thing for me, though, looking back, is a lot of the struggles that I had were so plain for a parent to see if they weren't absent. So, I mean, one of the things that I really struggled with was this self-image issue, and being the short fat kid, I was sick and tired of being turned down by girls and not getting picked for the team and everything else. And so I developed, unfortunately, an eating disorder. And I went the easy route for a fat kid, which was bulimia. I can still eat the shit that I want to, and then I'm just going to throw it all up. And I just think it's interesting how my father never noticed it or challenged me. How did we lose 40 pounds in 3 months and we're still eating the same and not exercising? And I was never questioned on any of those things. If I were to look at my own son right now, and he's in good shape, he could probably put on a little bit of muscle, but he's 9. So I'll give him some grace at least for a couple more years. But if he was that same kid and all of a sudden he had lost all this weight and was still eating the same, it would raise questions in my mind as a father. So I mean, there was that. I think the signs were right in front of him. He just never questioned anything. And then when I started going down a rabbit hole, which was drinking, and I was very vocal about it, I shared it with my father the first night that I got obliterated and how I felt the next day. And he just kind of laughed. And there was no, follow up conversation about, what is this going to look like future pacing. He knew I was doing a lot of things that I shouldn't have. And I think he gave me a lot of grace because I helped out a lot around the house. And it turned me into a wild man at heart. I just felt like I deserved to do the things that I was doing and be young and reckless because of how responsible, I was during the day. To your point, although, I'm not mad at my dad. I think there were so many great things about him. I think a lot of that absence really shaped me into something that was very different than this loving, happy, praying for everybody child that I was before I started going down that road.
So I'll ask you a follow up question to that. So it's easy for either one of us with the skill sets we have now, because hindsight's always 2020,
Yep.
to say like, well, I would have noticed. How come he didn't? Do you think that that's more so based on the skill set that you've acquired because of the absence, or do you think that he had the skill set and didn't want to put in the effort?
The latter. I think he was numb. I mean, he was
Okay.
dealt not an ideal hand. He was old and he was tired.
Okay.
And, because the train at the time was still staying on the tracks and I was doing well enough in school, that was okay. It was up until later on when I started getting arrested and having run-ins with the law where we started having some different conversations. But I mean, and I can tell you, even in my own household, my stepdaughter's 13 years old. Every other day, it's I have a headache. This, that, and the other. I'm like, it's because you don't eat, and you don't eat enough good food, and you're not drinking enough water, and we're not wearing our reading glasses to school, and for me, presence is so important in parenting. And I think so many parents, and unfortunately for my father for a season, so many parents just the idea of presence is we're in the same home and that's enough. I know they're protected and they have a roof over their head and they have food, so that should be enough. And it's just not enough, in my opinion.
And I don't disagree with you of the same belief that being in the same place is not necessarily being present. And it's rough, man. I'm sorry that you had to go through that. But the good side of it at this point is that you understand the difference between the two,
Correct.
right? Yeah.
What about you, man? Do you think that part of the struggles that even for yourself or young men face are simply them trying to figure out what real masculinity looks like because they potentially don't have a good blueprint in front of them?
I think this is going to be a really convoluted answer because I don't think that you can control outcomes. I think that you can control inputs. And I'll use myself as an example. My parents were not bad parents. My parents didn't drink. My parents didn't do drugs. They didn't do any of the things that I ended up getting into. I had advantages. Like we didn't have money when I was coming up, but I never went without. You know, my dad wasn't home, but he would try to make it to like the ball games. When I went to go get scholarships to go to college because I could, he's like, no, somebody else needs that. I'm like, I'll pay for it. Is it? I went to college. I have 2 college degrees. Like I had all these things. So he couldn't control the outcome of what I was going to become because that was a moment of impact that happened that there's no way you can teach that. But I do think that it's going to be a struggle for all young men because there's not a clearly defined definition without an opposing force telling them what masculinity is anymore. I mean, only 50% of the country believes that there's only 2 genders. Like that's how wild everything is right now. So young men coming up, I think that having a traditionally masculine, faith-based father will give you a very strategic advantage. And I think that having that blueprint in front of you will do massive benefit if you can follow the leader. But I also think that I can map out anything for absolutely anybody. You're a business owner. Here's your roadmap to success. Here's exactly the things that you need to do. What percentage of those people perform?
Yeah.
It ain't high, I can tell you that much, right? So going hand in hand, I would say it is your job, it is your duty as a man to be the blueprint and give it your very best effort to allow your kids to mirror what you want them to become and pray that the other side doesn't show up.
Yeah. And I love that idea of you can control the inputs, but not necessarily the outputs.
Yeah, but that's in pretty much everything,
Yeah.
right? You put forth your best effort, you stay cognizant of the things that you know that you can control. And if you're trying to create an outcome, you have to be that outcome.
Yeah.
And just pray for the rest of it, you know?
Yep.
So when you became a father yourself, did it force you to confront parts of your childhood that you hadn't fully processed yet? And if so, like, how did that process start? What did it look like and what did it evolve into?
Initially, no. So you know, I've been a father figure for a long time. You know, whether it was for my siblings after my dad passed, my amazing bonus kids, when Amanda and I got together. But then when William was born, it did strike a different feeling of connection and love in me, which is something I think other people that have, bonus kids and their stepkids and those kind of things could definitely, understand. But it didn't change anything right away. I had a different feeling of love and protection and all that kind of stuff. But what ultimately kind of kicked me in the ass was when I kept going down this road of self destruction, I would then think, do I really want to mirror this to him? And as much as I know this is logically stupid, why am I continuing to do this? And then ultimately it was, I would never in my right mind give my son the advice that, yes, you should put these inputs in your body and they're going to generate all this chaos and turmoil and things that ultimately you're responsible for. And hey, it's okay because society in large part does this. And so I finally just had to have a come to Jesus moment with myself. And my son even had it with me too. So, I mean,
They're good at that.
yeah, they are, especially even when they're young, they just kind of speak the truth. And his whole thing was, why do you keep poisoning yourself? And I was like, well, I'll just say what every other stupid, dysfunctional adult would say and say, well, this is what we do with our friends and to relax and have a good time. And he was like, well, why? I don't understand why people would poison themselves to relax and have a good time. And I'm like, you've got a good point there, my friend. And it really just started there,
Mm.
specifically with him. But prior to even those moments, I kept realizing that the way my dad fathered me, I didn't realize the impact of it right away, but I was seeing myself do it with them. And everything was about chores, grades, you name it. Or did we get our yellow belt yet at dojo and after school? And why is the 5-year-old girl in your class getting her yellow belt faster than you and you're 8 at this time? And are we doing our push-ups every day? And I didn't even realize it until my wife pointed it out,
Of course.
God love her. And she's like, why is it that the first thing that you say to them when they come home is, did you do this? Did you do that? Why isn't it just, hey, how are you? How was your day? And giving them a hug. And I'm like, well, yeah, but they still need, and I was like, and as I sat in deep reflection for a long period of time, I was like, I know what this did to me.
Mhm.
And not all of it is bad, but I know some of the coping mechanisms that came from that when I wasn't achieving all of the time. So yeah, it definitely made me have to confront some things and then realize, if I want a better life for them, which is, a father that loves and accepts them no matter what is on the scorecard, and gives them grace and praise, I need to change my behaviors and not just for them, but for myself first.
I agree. So to go along with that, the questions that you ask them when they come in the house, did you do this? Did you do this? Do you feel that the questions you are asking are so that you can set them up to live up to what your expectations of the world are or what they're actually going to need to be?
I think that it was so indoctrinated in me that, and I know the byproduct of it, which is good on the outside, my justification was they need to learn how to do these things anyway, and I'm going to continue to follow through until they do. When I sat more deeply and thought, it was like, yeah, I'm glad I learned how to do these things, but my God, it could have been very different through the process so that I didn't hate who was asking me all the time about these things. I mean, it got to the point in my childhood and even with them, and they realize this now, and I don't even love this, is I wouldn't ask my father if I could go do something until I had everything done and then some, so that there
Yeah.
was no reason he could say no. And so, like, my kids would come to me and say, "Hey, can I go to so and so's house? Did you do your chores? Is all your homework and stuff turned in? Yeah, I got these done. I've got to go do this." I'm like, "Well, then the answer is no, because you didn't get everything done." And then I realized I was becoming this dictator, overbearing father that only cared about those things.
Yeah.
And I just don't. I think there was good intention behind it, but I think I honestly was teaching them the same things that I learned, which was, love is conditional. And at the end of the
Yeah.
day, as a parent, it should not be. And it wasn't until a coach of mine asked me, he said, if your son drove your truck into the lake and totaled it, would you hate him? I'm like, no, I'd be very upset. And also I'd wonder how a 9-year-old drove the Raptor into the lake, but no, I'd still love him. And he was like, that's one of the constructs of society though that needs to be broken. He said, love, especially in marriages, is very conditional. And he said, I'd love for you to give yourself unconditional love first and then also do the same for your kids. And I was just like, well,
Yeah.
that's good.
Yeah, it gets programmed into us. I think Chris Rock was the one that said that only women, children, and dogs are loved unconditionally. Men are loved under the condition that they can provide something. And I think that that in and of itself is the most faithless way to look at things.
Yeah.
So when I look at Jesus and I talk to him at this point, I talk to him like he's my dad. And I think that if more people would do that and have the understanding that if Jesus is your father, how many times have you not followed the rules? Just today, we'll start with that. It's a bunch. He's never stopped loving you. And if you can zoom out and pull yourself back into that, it helps because my kids aren't going to be perfect. I'm the furthest thing from it. But my worldly dad was hard on me.
Yeah.
Jesus never has been. So now I do my best to mirror what he would think. There's still rules, guidelines, and things of that nature that I know are going to set my kids up for success. But instead of just diving into, did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? And when it does, if there's 5 yeses only focusing on the no, well, you don't get to do this because of this. There's a healing process that needs to come after. And this is something my wife taught me. And I know it's probably a little off topic, but I was doing the same thing. My dad was very hard on me. I mean, he's a kid. I was in his early 20s. He had 6 kids by the time he's 31, right? Like it's old school, right?
Yeah.
You have no money. You don't know how you're going to make it or anything. He's a stress ball and he's a hyper performer like you and I. He's an ops guy and a leader. And I can't even now I can look back and be like the amount of stress in that day, like there's absolutely no way I'm succeeding.
Yeah.
Right? I couldn't even lead myself in my 20s. But what my dad would do is the same thing you and I are doing or we're doing, which is I would discipline. I need to make a strong man. The conversations I have with my daughter are different, but my son is the sweetest kid in the world. I was just hard on him. Like I'm not raising a kid. I'm developing a man. And my wife came to me. She's like, you can do that. She's like, but you need to heal immediately after. She goes, I refuse to have our kids go to bed any night wondering if their parents hate them. She's like, you're not going to do that. She's like, you're not going to allow that. So now every time that I get after my son, immediately when it's over, I will get down on one knee, face to face with my son. I'll give him a hug. I'll say, hey, Daddy loves you. You're my best friend. That's never going to change. And here's what I'm trying to teach you. Does this make sense? And if it makes sense, we're good. And he'll return with, I'll say again, like, you're still my best friend. And he'll look at me and say, that's never going to change. If he doesn't understand, he'll ask me a question, which is good. And the kids find you out really quick, man.
Yes.
I had that come to Jesus, another one, just not here recently. I didn't know because I thought I had stopped drinking early enough for my son not to remember. He just turned 7 in February. I've been stark sober for over 2 years, right? And I didn't drink every day, every weekend. It was like once a quarter, but I was nuts when I drank. I want to say it was 6 weeks ago, something like that. He looks at me, he goes, why don't we go to Turtle Creek anymore? I'm like, excuse me? For y'all that don't live in Georgia, Turtle Creek is a liquor store. I haven't been near Turtle Creek since I've lived in Jefferson. It's 4 years old. My son latched on to the fact that he would be in the car when I would stop by the liquor store. They catch it so quick. So I think it's vitally important, just like, you're talking about, you catch yourself in those trends and you just change. So I appreciate those responses, man.
Speaking of that, though, I want to pivot to a darker side of some things that we've been
Okay.
through. Uh, Addiction usually doesn't start when someone is trying to destroy their life. It starts with coping. At what point did you realize that alcohol, and or drugs, that those habits weren't actually helping you cope, they were controlling you?
I think that when I realized that I had the inability to exhale through any part of my life except when. And this was the best way I ever learned to explain it to people. Some people, when they get off of work and they go home and they open the door and their kids run up and give them a hug, they exhale. Everything from the day is gone. Everything is good. Everything is golden. And joy picks up where chaos left off. I never felt it. And I started to realize that the only time I had ever exhaled in my entire life was when I used drugs or when I drank. And the outpour of everything that was pent up inside of me, like from an anger standpoint, that I had been controlling and locking away, would come out. I found that it had to go, and that it was okay for me to not be okay. But I didn't like really figure that out probably until after, I'd say, like, actually have the epiphany of like, this is what you're doing to yourself, until probably 7 or 8 years in. And I think I was around 32 years old where I was just like, I see this now. Like, I knew it was an unsuccessful action, but I didn't really understand the gravity of what I was doing until probably 7 or 8 years in. And once I understood, I was like, oh, like, I got to find something that's different than that. And then it took probably another 8 years to like actually find it. But
Well,
at least I was searching.
and I think part of the problem of the awareness and understanding of that too, though, is because it's such a group or societal norm. If everybody else around you is doing it, this is just normal and it's fine.
Yep.
Until all of a sudden you start surrounding yourself by other people who are not doing that. And you're like, wait a minute, their life looks better than mine.
Mm-hmm.
What's the common denominator?
Well, yeah. Well, even with those people, I was in such denial. I was like, you're just not telling me you're doing it. You have something. There's something out there. Like, the old saying, everybody's addicted to something. It could be sex, drugs, rock and roll, like whatever it is. Like, everybody's addicted to something, until I found out they weren't. And a lot of it came from the faith side, where it's like, what do you mean? You're just obliviously happy because you pray and go to church? And I'm like, not exactly. And it's probably part of this conversation later, but yeah, it took a while for me to realize that I was leaning into it. And then once I realized that it was the only thing that I was doing to help cope and it didn't bring joy,
Yeah.
I had to let it go. So, a lot of people assume successful people have their lives together, but success and addiction often coexist with each other. What did addiction or destructive habits look like in your life during your lowest season?
If I could make it a synonymous to something, it was a roller coaster. The interesting thing about it for me is I was a high functioning alcoholic. And I used to joke, my wife and I, that, man, we got our shit together and we drink all the time. Like, we're good. We're fun to be around. Business is good until it wasn't. And it generally, I mean, there was this same roller coaster every week. And it was, and I'll start with Fridays or, Thursdays. And, Thursday nights, hey, we're rolling into Friday. It was a good week. We're going to have a couple of drinks. Friday, let your hair down if you still have it. You get out of work, you go to the liquor store, and you know that one bottle's not just enough. So let's get two just in case, because we can't be stupid and drink and drive. So, and you would know this, the more you have, the more you'll consume. And so, and then all of a sudden, it's a couple of bottles of wine, a bottle of tequila, and a bottle of vodka. And you've got this is the house. And Friday, you're having a good time. And then Saturday, you wake up and then you're like, oh God, I feel so terrible, but I slept so long. How? And then you start drinking first thing in the morning because you got to have hair of the dog to kind of feel okay. And then, and that kind of progresses into day drinking throughout the day. And then you hit Sunday and you can't go to church because if you smell like a brewery, now you're a real sinner. And then so you don't go to church and then you're day drinking Sunday to feel a little bit better. And then some way, somehow throughout the weekend, we would get in some knockdown, drag out fight about something stupid. And, maybe it was Amanda didn't put the clothes away. And that irritated me a little bit throughout the week. But now I'm really irritated because now it's, because alcohol and drugs are an amplifier.
Mm-hmm.
And, whether they're a depressant, a stimulant, whatever you want to call it, they're also an amplifier.
Agreed.
So everything in my life that was bothering me now was at an all time high. And so we would get in some ridiculous fight, and unfortunately in front of our kids. And even if they were in their rooms, they would still hear it. We don't live in a mansion. And so they would hear this. And then, you know, Monday would roll around and you feel so terrible. And you're going through all the physiological stuff that's going on inside when your body has just slammed on the brakes so hard after metabolizing all this for so many days. Monday, you show up terrible. Tuesday, you start kind of getting it back together. Wednesday, all right, now we're good. And then here we go again.
Bro, I'm so glad this is a podcast right now because if y'all could see my face, like he's basically giving me a hangover as we're sitting here. Like I know that you guys can't see this, or maybe we'll put it out there on a clip, but I can taste the hangover in my mouth right now. My stomach is churning because I know exactly what he's talking about.
But that's the reality.
It is. It's 100% the reality.
And unfortunately, like, you know, with any sort of addiction, there's nothing that makes you feel better in the immediate other than more. And then so you keep doing more. And my biggest justification through the whole process was, well, if I'm high functioning and if I show up at 70% and I can still wipe the floor of everybody else that doesn't have an addiction issue, I'm good. And it wasn't until I kept repeating the same cycle over and over and over and over again. And then being the hyper addictive person that I was, well, then it was okay. Well, now we need to come full stop on everything. And we need to go to the gym every day and drink our gallon of water and eat nothing but good food. And that's why I've done 75 hard so many times.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would get to the end and I'd go, okay, now it's time to celebrate. We did a good job. And then I'd start the cycle again until those cycles, they did get shorter and shorter because the self-awareness was there. But then finally I was just like, you know what? And also, partially thanks to you, I'm like, Nick ain't fucking doing it. Even though he still has stress and all these things in his life, I know it'd be way worse if he had this still going on in his life. So maybe I should just not do what I've done, which is say, let's be an extremist on the other end, but also not create some New Year's resolution, which is like, well, for the next blah, 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 I'm not going to do it. It was just like, you know what? This doesn't serve my life.
I love it.
And it doesn't serve my life. And it doesn't, it's not back to your inputs. Inputs for children can also just be what they see.
It's mostly.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, and I am consistently, because you can think you're hiding it from them and everything else, and they know. And so finally I was like, this is not the man that I want to be for me and for my wife and for my kids. And one of the sayings that I heard years ago that has always stuck with me, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but every time I drink, something bad doesn't happen. But every time something bad happens, I've been drinking.
Yeah.
And I went through every stupid financial decision, every stupid relationship decision, every massive fight we've had. Anything that's gone wrong in the last 20 years of my life, alcohol was the common denominator. And so I finally had to say, you know what? I'm going to take a season that has no finite end. and just take this out, and we're going to see what life looks like without it. And then we can make some really smart decisions as, hey, does this have a place here ever again?
And that's, I mean, it's a great way to do it. And I think the key word that you use there is serve.
Yeah.
If it doesn't serve you, there's no reason to have it. And I'll call you out on this one. When you're around other high performers, no matter how fun, and this is for everybody really, but I can use Dustin as an example. Anytime I came around you and you had a rough weekend, you didn't have to tell me. High performers can see it because most of us have been there. You can't maintain eye contact the way you used to. You look down a little bit more because of the things that are going on in your head. Your eyes are a little bit more bloodshot. Your anxiety is different. Your legs always shaking. You would fidget with your hands a lot more. I'm just like, eventually, because we're sitting down at lunch, I remember I'm like, he's going to tell me what's going on right now. And it's been with some of my other high performing friends. You know, they'll come in off of a long weekend. We'll meet at the gym and it's Monday and nobody can, like, they're always looking around, head bobbling. They can't make eye contact with me. I'm like, have a rough weekend, did we? Like, how do you know? You're not you.
Yeah.
So, and I was damn near a stranger for you at the time. So yeah, for those listening, your kids know you better than anybody in the world. So they will read you, see you, pick up on it, whether they speak on it or not. Everything you're doing and the consistencies that you hold in either good actions or less than optimal actions, they know.
And it messes at a deeper level. It messes with your frequency.
Of course.
How people perceive you, how you perceive yourself. And oftentimes we just lie. Well, what about you, man? Was there a moment when you realized, if I don't change, this will cost me everything?
The second I redefined what everything meant. Everything to me used to mean my job, my status, the position I held, how I was respected, and all of those things. And then in December of 2023, I got a new definition of everything. And everything was God, my wife, and my kids. And that was it. I went through my last drinking spree at that point in time. I was on the verge of quote unquote losing everything.
Yeah.
You know, my job, money, how, like all of the material things. You know, God had a talk with me, and I sat down and I wrote a gratitude list. And from that gratitude list, I pulled out the only things that I couldn't live without. And there were only three things. And it was God, my wife, and my kids. And the thought of not being able to see my son every single day and my daughter every single day scared me more than not having money. Like I know how to make money. I know how to work really, really hard. Now I'm not going to say that like I know how to make tens of millions of dollars, but I know how to take care of my family. But that singular thought of my home will be empty or I'll be in an apartment by myself. My son is going to be crying himself to sleep, asking where daddy is. His mom is going to have to lie to him or tell him the truth, which would probably be worse. It just turned me to the point where I'm like, I refuse. Because I promise you guys, like, after 2 decades of coping, it's still there. Like you don't go from drinking and doing drugs from the age of 23 all the way up until you're 40. And all of a sudden you don't have a thought process about it. It's like, oh, nope, I'm cured. It goes away. No, it's there. It's 100% there. It's there every day. Knocking like, hey, it's been 2 years. You're fine.
You're good.
You can have a drink. You can do this. Your kids aren't going to know. Your wife's in bed. You know, you can sleep in a little bit. Things will be fine. You work from home now, like a lot. You're not as forward facing as you used to be. Your partners won't know. Everything will be good. The whisper is always there. The devil is always in my ear. So I don't want anybody to like miss on that part of it. But having an understanding of what everything means to me now, which is God, my wife, and my kids, I will never betray them or betray that trust because I cannot live a day without God, my wife, and my kids. I can live without a paycheck and I can live without everybody's opinion of me. I had a purpose before I had an opinion. I don't care. It doesn't matter. So, but that was the moment. As soon as God said, hey, what you think everything is actually nothing. And you've been hanging around a lot of people that think that money is everything. You listen to money podcasts. You listen to people tell you, fuck your excuses, go hustle, do this, do that, do the other. And you start listening to people who are already full inside, who cherish the church, their wives, and their kids. That was the moment where everything changed.
Yeah.
So that was a good question. I like that one. So looking back now, what lie was addiction telling you that you believed for way too long?
That this is normal and I am fine because much like you said, I could look at the scorecard that I thought was adequate enough. We lived in great places, especially at a young age. We had checked off all the boxes. Business was doing fine. Our marriage was fine, all of that. And then, much like you said, you still struggle with this every day. I would go through short seasons where I thought I had it under control and now I was fine
Mm-hmm.
to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't matter how successful I was, didn't matter how good our marriage was, didn't matter how good anything was. As it repeated itself, the demons just got stronger and the addiction got heavier and worse. And it got to a point where a couple of times I'd almost lost it all.
Yeah. It's a scary spot to be, but there's always that little voice back there. Um, and Nick Dalton gave a really good sermon on alcohol, and I'll probably mess the numbers up, but I'll give you the paraphrase. I'm not a pastor, but the Bible refers to alcohol, I think, like 3 times. Yeah, Jesus turned water into wine, but it also explicitly says, not to get drunk. But it also refers to alcohol as a snake almost 30 times. So when you look at it, let's say from a parenting standpoint, right? I could probably put my child in a room with a snake and it'll probably be okay. But I probably shouldn't, right? It's like, yeah, like I'll put you in here with this boa. It's grown, like it's grown up around people. Like, no, I'm not leaving a baby in there. So, and it's the same thing when you look at alcohol, and it definitely doesn't say anything about hard liquor. And it's probably why it's called spirits. It's not a good thing. It brings out something else in most people or a different person. And Lloyd called me out on it. He explicitly said, I love you. Like, you're a great person. He's like, but the person that I met when you were drinking needs to die. It's 2 separate things,
Yeah.
and it's 2 separate people. So I wanted to kind of interject that because it's, even biblically, it's not like you have free will, but it isn't talked about highly to let that in.
Well, let's talk about our marriages a little bit, man. Where some of this is kind of showing up. So marriage often becomes the first place where our struggles show up. How close did your marriage come to breaking during that season?
It should have. Any other woman other than Jennifer Nicole, it wouldn't have made it. And I'll say this, and I've said it a million different times in front of a million different groups. The world is a better place because my wife is in it. And I would say that whether she was my wife or she's not my wife, she is the pinnacle of what a human being should be. She's loyal. She's kind. She's joyous. She's nurturing. And she also doesn't let me settle for anything less than my full potential. In that season, it should have broke. She should have said, this is never going to change. I've proven to you it's not going to change. Trust a person to show you who they are. I showed you. And if it weren't for her allowing us to have one more conversation where we both had to sit down and decide who I was together, it would have been over. We went out to dinner. And I said, hey, we just need to have a conversation. Let's do it in a public place. We're going to do a little report card and we're going to talk about what we need to do. The first question was, do you want to stay married? Not, are we going to stay married? Do you want to stay married? She said yes, because she's very biblically led. She wants to stay married. I said, I do too. I was like, so now I want you to tell me everything that you resent about me. And I'm not going to say a word. And the nicest things that have ever been said to me were from my wife. The meanest things, not even the meanest, the most truthful things that have ever been said about me, to me, that have been documented because I have a letter, were from my wife. And it was literally, you say you're this man. You say you lead people. You say you have a servant's heart. You say that you're like, every compliment that had ever been given to me by any human on the planet, she refuted. She's like, that's all untrue. This is who you are. I was like, okay.
Does your wife know my wife?
Either that or they're like listening to a podcast or reading something. But it was very necessary. And I could see her hurt. And when people are hurt, They only focus on negatives. So we took a step back. I was like, I agree with you. This is what I've shown you. But can we go backwards a little bit? She's like, yeah, of course. I was like, okay. When you didn't want to go back to work and we didn't make enough money, I was like, did I act like a man and go find a way? Or did I tell you no? She's like, you acted like a man and you found a way. I started coaching overnight while I was working second shift so that she didn't have to go back to work. I was like, when we both lost our jobs for COVID and we had no money because we just paid off all of our credit card debt, literally all of it. We had, I think, $900 to our name total. And then COVID hit. I had a 1-year-old at the house. We both lost our jobs the next day. I was trying to prepare us for the future. So I paid off everything. I was like, this is going to be good. Just got this job. Everything's fine. Got laid off. And then so did she. I was like, did I lay around and drink and sulk? I was like, what did I do? She's like, you got up the next day and you told me you were leaving and that you were going to come back with money. I was like, did I come back with money? She's like, yeah. I was like, what did I have to do for that money? She's like, you had to go push mow your ex-employees' lawns. I was like, yeah. I was like, so am I this drunk or am I this guy? And we went through several other instances. I was like, I'm not going to say that I'm a hero. I'm not going to say I'm a leader. I'm not even going to say that I'm a good man. I was like, but I'm also not going to say that I'm this. You can't tell me that I'm just this thing. Like, I'm also this. I was like, and I would like the opportunity to do more of the latter and show you that I'm the man that I promised I would be. And through that process, she was willing enough to give me one more chance based on potential and a promise versus what I had shown her. But it was a very difficult season. And it could have all ended with we're not doing this anymore. The kids are getting too old. They're going to see it. And instead, she was loyal when it was extremely difficult to be loyal to me. And that's why we are where we are now, because of that loyalty. So yeah, it's a hard question to answer.
Real talk. Most marketing problems aren't marketing problems. They're business problems wearing a marketing hat. Cute, but very expensive. Maybe you're getting traffic, but it's not converting. Maybe you're converting, but your average sale is too low. Maybe things are fine, but not scaling. That's usually a system issue, not a need a new ad issue. So here's the move. Let's hop on a short call, look at your business, and see what's really holding your growth back. No pressure, no pitch, just a fit check. If we can help, we'll tell you how. If we can't, we'll tell you that too. Tap Learn More and grab a time.
So when you think about the damage those seasons caused in your marriage between you and Amanda, what was the hardest conversation that you had to have with your wife?
I mean, it was twofold. So, I mean, the hardest conversation I had to have initially was with myself. It came on the backs of some really destructive behavior and, you know, just a messed up singular moment. And I remember prior to that, we were going through just so much. I kind of had in my head, like, it's okay if this fails. I'll be fine. And I had come home from work. She was devastated, super upset. And I came home from work because I'm like, I can't focus on what's in front of me. I need to do something, but I don't know what to do. And so I got home, I said hi, went on a walk. And I was listening to a book, I think it was From Wild Man to Wise Man. And it talks about these two parts of life. Most of us don't get to the second part.
Right.
We only live the first. And so probably the first time I prayed in 5 years, I mean, at least. And I started having this conversation with God and I'm like, I can sit here and say a lot of this feeling of unsafety and insecurity and all of this stuff that my wife feels as a byproduct of other men and other situations. But the reality is, I've created this in my own home. And I got home and I said, we need to talk. And my wife was like, about what? And like, I mean, I could tell she was like visibly shaken because she didn't know what was on the other side of this.
Yeah.
And so I brought her in the living room and I just said, look, I'm a fucking mess. And I said, I can't take back anything that has been done, but what I can do is make some commitments to you. And I said, the first thing is I've got to stop. I've got to stop drinking. I need to go find some help. I would like to get back in church. I said, this does not mean that we've got to get the whole family in the car and go do this if nobody else wants to go. But at a minimum, I would like to bring William. I would love for you guys to come too, but if you don't want to, that is okay. I have to do this for me. And, and I said, the other thing that I am really hopeful for is that you give me a chance, much like you said, I'm not just this guy.
Mhm.
For a fact, I'm majority great. I would like for you to give me a chance to lean into that because I said the last thing that I want for you and for me and these kids is a broken home
Yep.
because I know the byproduct of that. So can you at least give me a chance? And she was like, well, yeah, like what does that look like? And so we started going through that. And for a long period of time, honestly, things were really good until they were so good that I was like, man, I'm good. I don't have any issues. And then we had a couple of short seasons of repeated behavior. And finally I just went, nope. Like this is the one contributing factor to all of these things, and I've been working so damn hard on myself. I'm not going to succumb to this, and we've talked before about obesity and all these things, and the food just doesn't jump into your mouth, and you've got to
Mhm.
have the ability to say no, and that's so easy for me to say because I don't have that problem. My problem was the bottle.
Of course.
And then when I sat there and I'm like, and that is also an inanimate object that just sits there and it doesn't jump into my mouth. So maybe I could just and for me it was more of a commitment than anything else. It was like, no, I am a person that keeps my word. So I am going to commit to this.
Yep.
And much like you said, you had this visceral reaction to that cycle of drinking. It's so funny now when I talk to somebody who is still heavily invested in that in their life. I'm like, oh God. And I shared a story with my wife last night about a gentleman I was talking to,
Yeah.
and she was the same way. She was just like, oh my God, I do not miss that feeling at all.
No, it's not great.
Yeah. So for you though, for any of us, but forgiveness isn't a moment, it's a process. What did rebuilding trust in your marriage actually look like after that on a day to day?
Patience and proof. Patience and proof. But there was an expectation set beforehand too. Because this was a cycle, right? The cycle was I would drink, she'd be mad, rightfully so. But then the marriage would continue to struggle, which would lead to me being more unhappy, which would lead back into it's not her fault, but it came down to, hey, we already know what this looks like. So what I would like, and we had this conversation, I was like, what I would like to do from tonight moving forward is wipe it all out. Even if you don't like me right now because you have resentments towards me, I need you to act as if you do. And same thing for me. I have my resentments because there was a lot going on at the time. A lot of things that I think should have been handled very differently. Like, I'm going to drop mine too. I was like, and we are going to act as if, and we're going to do the things that we know marriages should do. We're going to greet each other at the door. We're going to sleep in the same bed. Our sex life is going to look a certain way. We're going to act a certain way in public until that becomes what it should be. Now, there's other things that, other stipulations that needed to go in place because there wasn't proof yet. But we had an agreement, and as painstaking as it was at first, we stuck to that agreement until proof arrived. And now we're 2 years into that process. And I don't know if I'm forgiven for what I've done or that could ever go away. But we live a good life now, not without fault. But it is a process. It's not a moment. For men, it's a moment. It's like, oh, okay, it's over. Logical thinking. We're going forward. Just how we work.
Yep.
The emotional damage and stuff for women, it takes a lot longer. And I knew that. And I had seen that. But based on what I knew was going to happen, it's like, hey, I know I'm not going to be able to last 3 months of you disliking me. Mentally, I can't do it. And I'm not going to spend the next 3 months working through my resentments against you because you don't like me, because I don't understand why you can't just move forward. It's over, right? The same stupid shit we all say. So having that agreement helped. And then doing the hard work to rebuild a marriage was what ended up bringing us through. What did you change about yourself to become the husband your wife could trust again?
There's a funny song that I used to lean into for justification more than anything, but it was called Hard to Love.
I know it well.
Yes, and I used to think that that was like my damn anthem. And when we started going through this season, I started looking at all these things that I justified.
Okay.
And I finally had to I hate this word gaslighting because it gets overused,
Yeah.
but I didn't realize that a lot of my response to things that made Amanda uncomfortable or not trust me were were validation, to some extent. And I'll never forget, man, about a year ago now, I was having my first call with a coach that I work with, and he could tell I was distracted. And he said, "Man, what's going on?" I said, "Man, my wife's at it again." And he's like, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, she's pissed off at me about some chick online."
I
And he
remember
goes, "What do you
this.
mean?" I said, "Well, I don't know. So someone showed up and her people you may know, and the only friend we have or she had in common was me. And then I guess she checked out her profile and she said she's in a bunch of lingerie and shit." And I said, "Dude, I don't pay attention to any of that. They show up and they own a business and this, that, and the other. And if it's within our avatar, I'll generally add them. And then, if a conversation comes up, so be it. But I don't spend as much time on, social media as most people think." And he said, "Well, what normally happens?" And I said, "Well, what normally happens is I tell her all that and I'm pissed off and defensive that I'm not doing anything wrong. And then she lashes out irrationally and then she's pissed off and aggressive. And then it turns into a fight. And then we, go down a rabbit hole of a bunch of bullshit." And he goes, "Well, do you think you could just tell her that it's not that, and that you love her unconditionally and that there's nothing there and you understand how she feels and sorry for making her feel that way. That was never the intent, and that you love her and that she's beautiful." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's so easy. It ain't going to change anything." So I sit here and I fire off this message to my wife, and my wife sends me a heart emoji back and says, basically, "Thank you so much for seeing me. And I know you're not doing anything, but this just triggers a feeling in me. And sometimes I just feel insecure and I go down a rabbit hole. And when I see this stuff, that's just what comes up for me. But thank you." And I was like, "What the fuck? This is all I had to do." But that was just one thing that
Of
I had to
course.
do. Then I had to start looking at my other actions and going, "Okay, if I do this, do I think it is going to create that potentially?
Yeah.
Maybe. So maybe I shouldn't do this because it doesn't matter."
Yep.
And then to your point, then it just became this daily thing of proof over and over again to show her, "Hey, like, I am the man that you can trust and that
Mhm.
loves you, that goes far and beyond just providing," because that's what a lot of men think they need to
It's
do.
a cop out.
Or it is.
It's
It
such a
I
cop
need to
out.
give her the safety that she needs, which is more than a roof over her head, money in a bank account. It is the respect, love, all these things, words of affirmation, touch, all this stuff that I knew my wife needed. And I'll tell you what, and they make funny jokes about this for men. They say, men are like dogs,
Yep.
to the extent where, you want him to do something, or like your puppy, you tell your puppy to sit, it sits, you give it a treat, the puppy loves it, it wags its tail, it keeps doing the thing. Men are the same way. You tell me I'm doing a great job of taking out the trash. I'll fucking take the trash out when it's half full now because I want to show you how good I am at taking out the trash. Well, the reality is women and kids also need that too. So
Of
being
course.
thankful to her and telling her, "Thank you so much for doing this," or even something, and I don't take much relationship advice from my mother, but something she shared with me a long time ago that really helped for her and my father for a season was every day they shared one thing that they appreciated from the other. That was the thing. They shared one thing, "Thank you so much for whatever." And so, for her and I, it has really just been a pivot to remove a lot of the ego and insecurity in our relationship and just lean into love and grace and a higher level, which unfortunately that wisdom generally is not gained until you've been on the other side.
Bro, it's so crazy to me that men can't figure this stuff out.
We're hard headed, brother,
No, bro, but we no, but we do it at work. You do it
because
at
there's a
work.
scorecard and it's easy to see.
Even without the scorecard, you want your team to trust you. So you take actions and you speak a certain way so that they trust you. You don't do things of mistrust. If somebody feels a certain type of way about you at work and that was not your intent, you hurry in there to fix
But
that.
but a lot of that is ego led, and there's authority that is there. That you don't in most businesses. It's not when we partner up and you're a team member of mine. We're one. There's
Mhm.
no biblical conversation, to my knowledge, about that, but there is
No.
about man and woman and husband and wife. And so, a
Yes.
lot of times in business, it's ego driven. The other reality that I had to come face to face with a year ago was, my coach said, "What? Why is it that your culture means so much to you and your people, and yet you still have problems in your own home?" And I said, "Because I can fire team members. I get to choose every day who is here, and they can also not be here. Family is family. And yeah, you can get a divorce and be an estranged father and all that, but I don't subscribe to that.
But you would think that you would put more effort into the people that you can't fire.
100%.
That's the point. It's just leadership. It's not this magic freaking potion. Like,
no, but the other reality, and I know you'll feel this, unfortunately for most men, they give most of what is in their cup to their business and they give their family the rest, and that's ass backwards.
100%. The priorities are wrong. And I don't know if it's because we've been taught wrong, or we just don't want to listen, or we feel more respected at work versus like having a task when we get home, or whatever it is. But it's not. And I said all those things because that's how I have felt. I'm not pushing that on anybody else. But it's, if you break it down to its most simplistic thing, at work, you will say something, even if it is fake, in the moment to get the desired result that you want. But we refuse to do that at home. Everything has to be combative. It makes no sense because that's ego driven too. If my wife is right, but I don't want her to be right because I want her to see my side of the story and this, that, and the other thing, the result's not going to change. It's just starting an argument. So I'm not saying it's simple. It's just, it astounds me, myself included, where it's like, wow, I can do this really, really well at work. Why can't I figure out stuff at home?
At a logical level, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
However, here's the other reality. In business, in large part, for most of us, we're leading very logically. Hopefully, we're not leading very emotionally. When we are home, that is our safe place and our sanctuary. That also means that we will take off the mask because we feel comfortable, and they will see all of us. To your point, your wife calling you, for lack of a better term, a fraud, mine also calling me this. You show up as this, you go do your podcast, you say these nice things online, and go back 2-3 years and she's like, and most of it's bullshit. And I was like, damn, well, none of my team members would ever say that to me. But when you have that hard reality, then it's like, okay, then I had to lean into this idea of another term that is thrown around way too loosely. And people don't even, they say, well, I'm being authentic. Most people that say they're being authentic, you're being a version of somebody else that you like, which looks like everybody else also in the process, or you're just being an asshole. You're using being authentic as being an asshole. And finally, I was just like, part of the reason I got out of corporate America is I didn't want to wear a fucking mask. And so now for me in this season, it's like, no, just be you all the time. And so at work, they're going to see all those versions of you. And sometimes that means a lot of humility, a lot of vulnerability, because I don't have all the answers. I'm responsible for all the results.
Yep.
But the same thing at home. I don't have all the answers. I'm still responsible.
Of course. And I agree with you 100%. But I also think, and this will challenge everybody, even though we all know that we don't have all the answers at home and all the answers at work, we will strive for personal development at work to have more answers at work than we will at home.
Yep.
And it's ass backwards. I live it. I get it. How many books have you read about trying to be a better husband? Not as many as, the answer is not as many as you've had about being a better leader at fucking work. I guarantee it.
Yeah.
And that's not me calling you out. It's a fact, right? It just is what it is. You could look at me right now. I've read more personal development books, forward, backward, and everything than I've read the Bible. That's personal development, like spiritual leadership development. And I'm ashamed to say that.
Yeah.
I haven't read any marriage books out. Well, actually, that's a lie. I have read some, but in comparison, where my energy is focused on, and it shouldn't be that way. Oh. And when we talk about the core four, that's why it's in the order. It's in the order, right? Like God, family, fitness, finance. If you take care of the first three, the fourth one falls into place, but we take the fourth one and we put it all the way up at the top. And it's crazy to me because I still do it. So again, like just going along with the conversation we're having, it's like, I've been in the same situation. I look at it, I'm like, damn, like it really shouldn't be as complicated as we make it, but damn, we sure as hell like to make it complicated.
Well, because to that point, and we'll jump into faith here in a second, but to that point, so many marriages, the relationship starts out as some sort of trauma bond. And if both of you aren't healing, it's still there. And it is something that you have to work through, and most don't. And the other thing that I love about partners is it's like, man, my wife can flip a switch in me like nobody else. It's because she installed most of them.
Yeah, that's true.
She knows, to your point, they can say, and when I say they, this is any partner, anybody, not women specifically. Your spouse knows you better, hopefully, than anyone. So they know what's going to lift you up and they know what can tear you down. They know the things that trigger you the most. And unfortunately, especially when we're acting irrationally and when we're in fight or flight and we're leaning into emotion before we are logic, those things come out. And that's the reality. But let's lean into faith a little bit more. So people sometimes talk about faith like it is a light switch, but those moments are usually deeply personal. What did your turning point with God actually look like?
So I've had probably two like really major ones. So I don't really need to like go into the scenario per se, but what it looked like was just basically the first time that I ever heard him speak to me and tell me that I could give him everything and it would be okay. Life was really heavy. It
Yeah.
was really heavy. I had reached a breaking point and, I had a conversation with somebody at church and, he asked me if it felt heavy. Guy didn't know who I was. I said, yes, sir. And he kind of just whispered in my ear. He goes, it's only heavy because you choose to carry it all yourself. And I had a complete breakdown. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be fake anymore. Like, I'm tired of playing this avatar. Like, it sucks. I'm tired of chasing people's opinions of me. And it was just like an overwhelming amount of like awareness where it's like burn it all to the ground. I just like, I can't do it anymore. So it was it looked like surrender is what it's me waving a white flag. Like, hey, I tried. Like, I quit. But it's like, please help. Like, just like save me from me. Speak to me. Show me. You don't have to prove yourself. Like, I feel you here. Like, I understand. That's what it looked like. That's what it felt like. That's what everybody else could see. It was complete and utter surrender. I can do more. I'm stronger than you. I'm bigger than you. I'm harder than you. I'm more mentally prepared than you. All of it forever. I'm more disciplined. You're not willing to sacrifice what I'm willing to sacrifice to be successful. You're just not at the time. From that to I will listen to anything you tell me to do. Just take it. Take all of it.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Complete surrender is what it looked like for me. So yeah, that's the best way in a short way to explain that. So for you, when faith entered your life seriously, what was the first truth it forced you to confront with yourself?
You were never designed to carry the weight of the world. I
Agreed.
was never designed to carry the weight of the world. So much like your story, I had two really pivotal moments in my life. One was in my early 20s. Man, I'd surrendered to God, gave my life. I was, man, born again, evangelist. Everybody needed to go to my church and do
Oh
these
yeah.
things. And all that. And then when I lost my father and then another gentleman that was like a father figure, that's when I just said, fuck you to God. And I said, you know what? You took the two men in my life away from me. You don't love me. They're not here. Fine. I see what you're trying to say. I got it. And I ran. And I did the hustle culture thing. And I did the no one can outwork me thing. And I did the no one gives a fuck whether you have enough money or food on the table or anything. It all is about you until, the world came crashing down. And I finally, because I'm pretty damn good at math and reason, I said, I don't know how this is going to work. And I know I also got myself here. And to your point, and then it was just complete surrender. God, just show me.
Nope.
And
I'll listen.
I'll show up every day
Yep.
and I'll do the work. And it may not be on my time because I don't have a lot of patience,
Yep.
but I'm willing to listen and I'm willing to do it. And then for me, much like you, it was just complete surrender and knowing that I can't carry the world.
Big relief.
Oh yes.
Big relief.
So did faith change how you define your responsibilities now as a man?
I think it helped me understand them a little bit more and reprioritize them. So I'm still supposed to be a protector,
Yep.
a provider. I'm still supposed to be a warrior. I'm still supposed to be a poet, pastor, priest, like all those things. Like, you're still supposed to be a traditionally masculine man. A different priority. Like, my first priority isn't showing my son how to make money. My first priority is showing him that God loves him. And that even if things are not okay, they're going to be okay because Jesus loves you. So just a shift, the way I treat my wife, the conversations that I have with her, It's a shift. I don't have dominion over my wife at all. I will lead in a certain fashion to protect her, but I'll lead with action, kindness, and love. Stand firm, act like man, and everything you do out of love,
Yeah.
which is a very, like, if you read that sentence, doesn't, it sounds like they're opposing forces, like stand firm, act like a man, but then everything you do in love. It's, well, what about the warrior side of it? Right. But yeah, I don't think it changed the responsibilities. It made me understand them at a deeper level versus what society told me a man was, because it's just so incredibly fake.
Yeah.
It really is. Men are kind with the propensity to not be kind. Like, men are dangerous with the propensity to make sure that they're not. Your confidence should come from competence, not from screaming at people. You should always be lifting other people up. You should not allow someone else's actions against you define who you are at your inner core or react. Whereas before, I would do all of those things. Like, oh, I'm matching energy. I match what you bring me. No, you are not changing me. Your words do not change me. Your actions do not change me. And I've run into a bunch of situations here over the last years where, like, why would you help that person? Because I'm me. I don't care what they did. Jesus, like, as a leader, he calls me to love everyone. That doesn't mean I have to surround myself with those people. But if someone needs help, regardless of what they've done to me, per se, on worldly standards, it's none of my business. My business is who I am and who God's called me to be. So that's how faith changed it. It took the world out of it. It's like, this is who you are as a man. You're not going to act how the world tells you to act.
I love what you just said there about what they did to me. Previously, especially with your comment about matching energy. My whole thing was, and this I hate the fact that literally people have said this, but I would do the same thing, except I would do more. And so, we used to joke and say, "Oh, I'm going to go Dustin Lundy them." And the first time I heard that, I'm like, "What does that mean?"
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, "I don't know if that's good or bad." And they're like, "Man, I've got all the facts, 6 pages of why they suck, and I'm going to hammer them." And when I was a younger man, I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, because that you need to be right." And then the other one was bringing in the B-2 bombers. And up until recently, probably within the last year, now I see that. I mean, I even literally on a call yesterday with somebody, and they said, "Man, I don't know why she hates you so much." And I said, "Yeah, I think it's really interesting because I've never said a bad thing about them publicly or online. I will have a conversation with somebody and share my thoughts, but I would still say the same thing to them." And I said, and what's so interesting is I also never respond to it.
Yeah.
And I know that erodes them even more. And but I said, the bigger thing here is that my question is always just what happened to them?
Yep.
Because I know I didn't create this in them. The world has done something to them to make them act this way. And I feel bad for that at this point. That doesn't mean that you forgive everybody and with that, let them back in your life to repeat the same things. But it also gives me a different lens to view people through.
I agree. And that's a struggle.
Yes.
That's a struggle. I get called on it quite a bit. So, Dustin, how did faith reshape the way you lead your family and your business?
Man, well, I had to move away from scorecards,
Ah,
first of all. No, it started with me first. I had to remove this idea of being a man that was led by shame to a man that was led by grace,
yep.
and then doing that the same for my team and for my family.
Awesome.
And so, ultimately, I still feel the need to have extreme ownership for the outcomes
Of
because I
course.
know a lot of my team and my family is a mirror of me. But I know if I'm being honest with myself and I'm doing the right things, I am a mirror of God.
Love it.
Yeah. Well, Nick, let me ask you something a little bit deeper. When you look back at your life before faith became real for you, what kind of man were you becoming? And if nothing had changed, where do you think that path would have taken you?
That's a hard one because I can't really consider myself a man before it. Like, there were attributes that the world would say were very manly, but I think that part of being a man is putting others before yourself, being responsible for and to people, leading out of love, having a servant's heart, but then also having emotional control, stability, and being able to bring peace into a room. Whereas I was unable to do any of those things. If your job on earth, and we'll take it out even a little bit more of a scope. If God created me in his image to love my wife like he loved the church, and to use the skill set that he gave me to better serve the kingdom, if that is what I was called to do, and I had no faith until 40, I can't consider myself really being much of a man because I wasn't doing that. I was building my own kingdom.
Yeah.
I was trying to prove based on worldly standards, who I am and that I should be respected. And that, I had receipts for how good I am. Like, look at the numbers. Look at the numbers. Look at every job I've ever had. Look at the numbers. The numbers show you how awesome I am. You can't refute. It doesn't matter what you feel about me as a person. My numbers are good. I wasn't being a man.
Well, with that though, are you thankful for the journey and the failures and the lessons?
I am so
what they've
thankful
taught you
for
now?
everything that he's shown me. I think at this point, and it's weird, I think I'm actually almost more grateful for all the hard shit because I get to see it manifest now when I have conversations with younger leaders and young men. I have a certain level of empathy and life experience that just most people can't have. I was angry at God for a long time.
Yeah.
You took my sister, destroyed my family. You made me this way. I was supposed to be made in your image. Why did I have to be a drug addict? Why did you put this addictive side in me? Why am I always angry? Why can't I experience joy? Why am I never happy? Why would you leave me here? You took my sister. Why would you leave me? Why are you taking my friends? Why did I survive? What about me is worth being here? You chose wrong. So angry, man. So angry. I just wasn't patient. And until I saw it all come together and him show me hey, I judge you based on the sword I turned you into, not the fire I used to make you. This is why. And now I get to experience it. When I start speaking to people, things will come out of my mouth that I am not smart enough to say. There's a passion that'll come out of me that I am not emotionally intelligent enough to have. And I know it's not me. I know it for a fact. So yeah.
Well, let's
Yeah,
jump into
it's good.
let's jump into our rapid fire and we'll close this out, my friend. So, what is one thing your younger self desperately needed to hear?
You're enough.
What addiction took from you?
Time.
The hardest lesson marriage has taught you?
I'll never be good enough for her.
What success means to you now?
Leaving my community and my family better than when I entered it.
Hmm. And then what legacy you hope to leave?
I don't want to leave a legacy. I don't want people to remember me realistically at all. I want to create impact. I want people to develop and do better than I ever did just because of the pathways that I created.
Yeah, stuff, man. Well, if someone's listening right now and feels trapped in addiction, shame, or broken relationships, what would you tell them about the possibility of rebuilding their life?
What would I tell them about the possibility of rebuilding their life?
Yeah.
God loves you no matter what. You're forgiven for everything you've ever done. And on the other side of all of the shame that you feel that is not yours to own, you can have not just a survivalist life, but you can have an abundant life. And you can create an impact for people that you have no understanding of yet, but I promise you it's there.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that, man. I think one of the greatest gifts I finally let myself realize a couple of months back was this idea that God has forgiven me and I hadn't forgiven myself. So I still lived with all this shame. And you know what that does to a person. And I finally said, you know what? I am not more holy than thou. So who am I to still carry these burdens and all this shame if he has forgiven me?
And I will hit you with a quote that our good friend Luke Henderson mirrors with that. He'll look at people and he would say this to you in this moment. He would say, you not forgiving yourself when God has already forgiven you means that your standards are higher than God's. And that's incorrect.
Well, guys, most people think transformation happens in a moment, but it doesn't. It happens in 1,000 small decisions. The decision to be honest, the decision to take responsibility, the decision to rebuild trust. Nick and I didn't arrive here because we're perfect men. We arrived here because we were broken men who finally chose to face the truth. Faith didn't erase our past, but it gave our past a purpose. And if someone is listening today that feels like their life is too far gone, we want you to hear this. Redemption is still possible. Nick, brother, thank you for having this conversation today. And everybody else, thank you for listening to Life by the Horns.
Thank you, brother.